Hi, everybody. So we're moving forward with our interview component, and the topic for this one is what to do if my loved one refuses to go into treatment. So we designed this class for people whose loved one doesn't want to go, but it's also a great resource for people whose loved one has gone into treatment. So we recognize that this topic may only fit some of you, but it's a very important one, and we want to address that up front because it's likely to be causing you the most distress. So I'm going to let Ron start out by sharing his expertise and thoughts, having been in this field for 20 plus years, and I'm sure seen a lot of this kind of dynamic.
It's pretty common that family members see the problem sooner. They often are having to clean up the problem sooner. Those who have dealt with somebody who is a heroin addict may have more memories of the problem than the addict does, in that the addict can overdose, be resuscitated. They don't remember that. They remember using, they remember being in the hospital, the trauma of seeing them not breathing, turning blue, all of that is the family members. And truthfully, that people within 11 days after an overdose, they're at high risk of having another one.
Yeah, so that's why we said at the beginning of this program, of our course, that you're likely to be having more pain than the addict, and that's quite ironic given they're the one with the addiction.
It is. They're the ones who nearly died, and you're the one with all the pain about it. And so what do you do? And the goal here is to get the focus off of them, that trying to get them to understand, trying to get them to feel your pain is just making things worse. They will do but, they will distance, they will tell you your problems, all kinds of things to change topic. And I don't believe much of that is conscious on their part. I haven't found addicts to be all that conscious. Their inner world is not something they're just instinctive, and they're in
fighting.
a sense fighting for their life, for their survival. They believe their survival depends on, they're acting as though they're reacting like their survival is dependent on this drug.
So it's as though their brain, the survival part of their brain, has associated the drug with basic needs like food and water and air.
It's even more so.
And if you were to take away, let's say somebody's breathing, and they're going to fight as hard as they can because... And that's the kind of reaction you're likely to get from your addict.
Absolutely. So that's why the emphasis is on the family member saying, I'm in pain and I'm going to go get treatment. Not because it's your fault. It's because I'm not doing this anymore. And I'm not going to be able to withstand the love, the amount of love, the amount of fear over how could I live if you die is terrifying.
It is.
So that's why we get into that. We understand why we do it, but how do we keep from doing that? We know it's not helpful, and yet we can do it anyway. And so getting into your own 12-step program, Al-Anon, is a good beginning. And it is intimidating because you may not know anybody there. And it helps you have some empathy for your addict, your qualifier, because they don't know anybody at AA either. So if you're willing to do it, it means they'll be more likely to do it. Doesn't mean they will do it. But they're more likely to do it. If you're having a change in your ability to maintain your serenity and peace, regardless of what they're doing, it's like, wow, people will notice for the better. That's and people around you, your addict may not, but you're going to have more serenity and peace, and that's the point here.
It's not, your focus is being shifted from what the addict is or isn't doing, and which can just take over your whole life, to, okay, what am I going to do? I can't get him or her into treatment. Let's say they're an adult and they have the option not to go.
Right.
What do I do? Well, what you're saying is you can start with affiliating with other people who are going to understand what you're going through because they've gone through it or they are going through it. And that would be going through an Al-Anon. Codependence Anonymous is another group that can be helpful. And you want to look for a group where they aren't just talking about the addict or alcoholic in their lives and how awful it is, which can happen. You want to look for a group that's doing what? What would you want to look for?
Well, I think maybe in a subsequent video we'll talk about what to find, how to find a good AA group. But at this point, determine I'm going to be in a 12-step group. Once you make that commitment, then it's going to happen. It's just a matter of finding it, and we'll give you some guidance on that.
Yeah.
The other then is to get into therapy. If you're not seeing a therapist and having somebody who understands family dynamics,
right?
Somebody who can hear the details of your life and not get more anxious than you are about it. You don't need an anxious therapist. So the ability, and you have an anxious therapist if they start telling you what to do.
Right.
That's what that's all about.
Yes.
So you get your own therapy. I can't tell you how many people went 30 days in residential treatment or primary care treatment for their addiction. How few, even if it was offered by the parent saying, we'll pay for your therapy.
Yeah.
How few took them up on
And we know from research that is in some ways a mirror image of whether the parent is willing to go to the therapy.
Absolutely.
And we understand, it's logical to think, well, I'm not the one with the addiction. Why should I go to therapy? Why should I go to 12-step? I'm the one. I've even had a client say, why should I be punished because my husband is an alcoholic? And my response to her was, you're not being punished, that this is for you. It's a resource to help you through this time in a way that you're not going to get by reading books or kind of on your own. And it's also meant, as you pointed out earlier, to help you get the focus off the addict and onto your life path and how are you going to move forward even though this addiction exists.
So again, if you're going to go to therapy, sometimes insurance pays. Some people have that. Sometimes it doesn't. That you're not going to say, well, I'll go if my insurance pays.
Right.
You're not going to do that with a toothache. You're not going to do that if somebody says, well, here's a lump, it may be cancer. Well, let me see if my insurance will cover. Yeah, I mean, we want to know what the insurance will do, but come on. Your life is dependent on this. Show a little initiative and save yourself. And in the same way, what are you putting aside on a year toward your own therapy? Mentally budget that, and so that you're not having this, because I heard many people, well, we've already spent all this money for treatment. We don't have the money for therapy. And so it's, you buy a new car and then they buy insurance. Why wouldn't you buy insurance for a new car? You can't afford to now replace it. And if you can't afford to get in, do treatment one more time, then the insurance is a minuscule amount when you're talking about outpatient psychotherapy.
So going to psychotherapy, you're saying, is like buying an insurance policy for somebody who's going into treatment or possibly someday will go into treatment. I always let people know that despite the myth of long-term, lifetime of therapy, most people go on average 20 sessions.
Woody Allen style.
Yeah. They get a lot out of what they do when when they feel like they've made progress enough to where they can kind of move forward. And I have a lot of clients in that category where they just come in periodically for a checkup. So we want you to know that we're not saying, okay, now here's a bunch more money to spend.
Right.
It's for you, again, to continue the journey after you're completed this course of how do I want to move forward with my life, taking the focus off the addict, not getting focused on getting them to do what we want. As much as I wish that worked, it doesn't. and also not letting their addiction become the whole focus of your existence. So we've talked about Al-Anon, getting your own psychotherapy started. What other things could people do?
Getting involved in a religious tradition or some other group that the research is very clear. If you have a group you go to on a weekly basis, you are happier than people who don't have that. So find a group. That 12-step is a group, but something else that you may not be interested in telling your friends, hey, your neighbors. My kid is in treatment, a heroin addict, or whatever else. They may know already, but that may not be what you want to have your conversations be. Again, you're trying to change the focus, and now they have the focus on your qualifier. You don't need that. But trusted people that you can talk to. Having a pastor, having a whether it's Rotary, a service club, something like that. That if you're a member of a country club, that's a weekly meeting that is not related to all of this trauma and chaos and all that kind of stuff. It's a way to just normalize your life a little bit, and it's helpful.
So having some kind of a affiliation that you go to regularly once a week, besides Al-Anon. And then the other thing I might add is there's a lot of research, and a really good book I would recommend is called Hardwiring Happiness by Rick Hansen. He writes a lot about why we need to focus our brain onto the reality of what's beautiful and awesome, and these kinds of real experiences that can happen just by going out to your backyard and really taking that in. He talks a lot about that. If some of you know about mindfulness meditation that goes along with that, there are other kinds of contemplative practices, and by contemplative we mean it could be just a very small little thing you do. One is called a breath prayer. Again, you don't need to be particularly religious to do these practices, but to connect with a higher power, however you define that, and these different practices, and we'll have a handout for you that lists them, can really help you, especially if you're struggling at that moment to, maybe you're getting overwhelmed with anxiety, you haven't heard from your loved one in a few days, and you're thinking the worst. And what else can you do besides just focus on that person and try to hunt them down and that type of thing? And now they're running, again, their addiction's running your life.
Right. If this were easy, we wouldn't be having this whole series. So trust that it is doable. It is possible, and what the addicts, alcoholics are told is progress, not perfection, and apply the same thing to yourself.
Yes.
I'm making progress. That if you have a relapse, that would be, I'm thinking about my loved one.
Yeah.
I'm saying, hey, haven't you called your sponsor, or don't you need to do this or that? That's a relapse. And you catch yourself, then you would call your own sponsor. You get yourself into your own therapy again. And so that's...
Yeah, you get back on track. So we also have a handout on how to find a treatment center when your loved one is willing to go, because that can be overwhelming. So you can go ahead and download that from this module in the course. And we will also be there's also a handout on finding a good 12-step program and contemplative practices. So everything we've been talking about, also we have a handout for you, and it'll be part of your workbook so that you can refer to it again, or again you can watch this interview and kind of remind yourself. So thanks for listening, and we'll keep moving forward in this difficult journey, but we hope a life-changing one for you and your loved one.